Today we're going to discuss the concept of freedom, of going out of Egypt, and we are in the time of the intermediary days of Passover. So today is the 19th of the month of Nisan. And what we're going to discuss is the Exodus from Egypt. Now it says, everyone who increases in the discussion of the going out of Egypt, that is praiseworthy. Now the word for the saper is the same word for the saper is the same word as sapir, which is also the same words that's used in the explanation of from a mystical perspective, the concept of the sfirot is the same word. What it really means is shining. So you could understand this to mean anyone who increases in the shining of the story of the going out of Egypt, harizeh mushubach, that he becomes improved. The zeh is referring to the person himself. So the literal meaning is anyone who speaks more and more about the Exodus from Egypt, then that is a praiseworthy thing for him to do. But you could read it to mean that anyone who increases in the shining forth the aspects of the redemption from Egypt, then he, the harizeh, meaning to the zeh, pointing to him, he is meshubach. He is, meshubach means, how do I translate into English? Like premium. Premium, if you go get an item, meshubach, it's a premium item, it's a higher quality, it's higher value, nicer. So the person himself becomes meshubach. He becomes premium. We need to say that we are allowing to shine, we're bringing to the forefront our consciousness and our awareness of the ways in which that we are experiencing our exile and disconnect from God Almighty, and the ways in which we are meant to come out of that. Now, the reality is that we can never be disconnected from God Almighty, so it's only possible to be connected. Person alive is connected to God Almighty. God is giving him life. Not alive person is if he's done what he needs to do and his soul is continuing, then he's also connected to God Almighty. So that's never going to cease to exist. So our real job is to stay in that level of awareness. It's not that we have to do anything to stay there. We just have to make sure not to lose sight of it. Don't lose sight of the reality. That's really our task. And once God Almighty took the Jewish people out of Egypt and in the process really brought the Egyptians to a higher level, that they came themselves to recognize God Almighty, then that's something that's now available to every human being all the time, anywhere. Now, we go to the book of Exodus, and we go to chapter 3. And we go to verse 12. You see, Vayomer, ki yeh imach, v'zelucha ha'es ki anechi shalachticha, v'hitziyocha es ha'am mitzrayim ta'avdun es Elohim ala har hazeh. That God Almighty says to Moses, who was worried that he was just a shepherd. He didn't have any social status to go and speak to a king of Egypt. And what merit do the Jews have even that they could take him out of Egypt? They require a miracle. And Moses was thinking that they weren't worthy of such a miracle because he saw already he had to flee Egypt because he saw excuse me, he'd seen already that he had to flee Egypt because he tried to break up a quarrel between two Jews, and they threatened to squeal on him to the authorities over the fact that the day before he had killed an Egyptian police officer who was maliciously beating a Jew. So he saw that there was this quarrelsomeness and they were slandering each other and stuff like that. So he was perplexed. How exactly is it going to be possible to take the Jews out of Egypt? So God responds to him in chapter 3, verse 12. So, I will be with you is responding to the point of the question about Moses' status. Meaning Moses is speaking in God's authority, not his own. And here you are standing, seeing this bush being performing God Almighty's commandment, and yet it's not destroyed by that. So you should know that you have the ability to carry out my will. I'm going to be with you. Stop thinking about yourself and the question of whether you're worthy or not. So now you could see that this is a sign that you're not going to be harmed in carrying out this mission. And as for the second question, the people are indeed worthy of a miracle, because when you're going to take the people out of Egypt, the Jewish people out of Egypt, you're going to be doing so in order that they should be able to serve God Almighty by receiving the Torah on Har Sinai, Mount Sinai. So it's therefore worth it, God says, for him to perform this miracle of taking them out of Egypt, even if they themselves are not themselves worthy. So they themselves are not deserving. So God Almighty has a completely different look at the situation. He's not thinking at it from a human perspective of, okay, we're making these calculations within the world. We're trying to figure out who am I, and am I worthy? Are they worthy? All these calculations are not what God Almighty is looking at them from. He's looking at, listen, I have a job to get done. You're going to do the job for me. You're going to be my emissary to do the job. And you are going to do this job with the Jewish people, even though they themselves, your calculations think that they're not worthy. That's not relevant to me, because I have a completely different calculation. A calculation is not on their current behavior, but it's based on their future potential. And that's how we have to look at every single person. Meaning to say, God Almighty is teaching us here how to look at ourselves and how to look at other people. We don't look at ourselves based on the rules and the guidelines of what is being, what we think is standard, or what we think is acceptable, or what we think status is. That's number one. And number two is we don't judge other people based on our calculations. We look at them from God's perspective. And that means that they are worthy, the Jewish people are worthy of being taken out because of the fact that God has these plans. His plan requires the Jewish people to be out of Egypt, and he is anticipating that they're going to participate in this service, that they could all serve God Almighty by receiving the Torah on Mount Sinai. So here we could see a key to being able to be redeemed, which is each one of us is a leader. Each one of us is a person who has a mission, has a responsibility that God Almighty wants us to carry out that responsibility. We often shirk that responsibility because we say, listen, who am I? What position do I have? What abilities do I have? Do I have the skills that are necessary to be able to accomplish this or not? And we start to make calculations, and we have this false humility. Like I'm a nobody. I'm just a simple person. And who am I to deal with all these other people? So the first thing is let's break this down a little bit. First of all, I'm incorrectly assessing myself. I'm also incorrectly assessing the people that I'm assuming are like so hoo-ha. Moshe is saying, well, who am I to speak to Pharaoh? He's such a big shot. Well, one second here. What got this idea? What leads you to believe that he's such a big shot? Because he walks around in a big palace and he has lots of servants and he has all kinds of fancy cars and chariots and and all these kind of things and jets. Therefore, you're going to think that he must be some sort of special hoo-ha. The answer is that all those calculations are off. Calculations about myself are off. The calculations about these other people that I'm sent on this mission to go and interact with them is also off. So I need to get into correct perspective and correct understanding of who these people are and what they really are. So we're continuing with chapter 3, verse 12. So we're breaking down, when you want to learn the verses in the Torah, you want to first see the Torah portion, the Torah verses in context. We're talking about going out of Egypt. We're talking about redeemed from our exile. And so we see there's two components. Moses is looking at himself as he qualified, and are the Jewish people qualified to be redeemed? So God Almighty says your calculations are off on both sides, both aspects. He says to Moses. So number one is, you don't worry about your qualifications, because I'm going with you, says God. I go with you to meet with the king. It's not about you, God. God is going to make you successful. That's what God is telling Moses. So we were breaking that down into two components. One is Moses, where's the mistaken thinking, the mistaken perspective? One is to think that who am I? And thinking that the king of Egypt is some big shot. He's some hoo-ha. So we have to realize, one second, our thinking is off base. We're giving incorrect valuation to the wrong factors. We're giving valuation to things in a way that they should not be given valuation. So this is something that we can realize in our own lives. So where do we see valuation in practice? So we're going to sell a business. We have a business here. There was it said that the connection was unstable for a second, sorry. So we have a business. We're going to value a business. What are we going to do? We want to buy a business. We want to sell a business. We need to hire a valuation expert. What's valuation expert? Valuation expert, is not merely to know what the value of each thing is, but to understand the relative weights, like inventory. Let's say shoes, okay? Shoes that $5 million worth of in a warehouse. Sold, they're all brand new. And they're from 1975. Okay. Now think about it, 1975 shoes. They're out of style. No one wants to buy shoes with that whatever cut they had in 1975. We have, no one wants to buy those shoes. Maybe they're deteriorated. And someone has to come in and say, okay, the business has $5 million of inventory on the book, but it's really only worth maybe $100,000. You have to go and find a place in the world that people would want to buy these shoes, that for them, this would be a wonderful thing to buy these shoes, but you can't sell them in the United States of America at $150 each because no one wants to buy those shoes. So then he has to figure out what's the value of the intellectual property. One is going to value at a lot of money and say, maybe there's some reason to consider this is more valuable than what it looks like on the surface. For example, if you have some technology and patent, what do you have in the patent? You have a piece of paper, and that piece of paper, it's worth 1 penny. But the piece of paper, if you understand what billions of dollars. So you have to be able to understand how to value things. Now, what you'll notice if you're in the business of buying and selling a business, same thing with houses, appraisals and houses, you'll see that you could get one buy, the the buyer hires a valuation expert and the seller hires a value. The seller's valuation expert wants to tell you, he wants to skew everything to be more valuable. The buyer's valuation expert wants to skew everything to be less valuable. So we see each person has a bias. We see this also in the business of public adjusters and insurance valuations. So your person's house gets damaged in some sort of damaging event. You hire a person that says the damage is $100,000, and the insurance company comes and says that the damage is $15,000. And we're not even talking about anyone being dishonest over here. Okay, we're not talking about dishonesty, because that's not the point over here. You could have dishonesty where a person is actually, lying about the value of something, either to say too valuable or less valuable. But I'm talking about people. We're talking about a case where both people are looking at the situation, but they're looking at it from their biases, from their particular viewpoint, and they only see a limited part of the picture. So the guy who's working for the seller's case, he knows his job is to make the biggest price possible, and he's going to look around for comparables that are going to help support his idea that the just the sounds better. He's going to go try to find support for his idea. He's going to have all kinds of proofs. In fact, if these two valuation experts get together, they can make convincing why their valuation is right. No one's doing sense, but you could see, and you could have a difference in valuation of multiple hundreds of a percent difference in valuations, meaning to say, you could have one guy comes to say the business is worth $1 million. Another guy comes along and says the business is worth $10 million. That's a 10-time difference in valuation. So what's the difference over here? The difference is perspective. Perspective. The person who's selling the business is thinking about how much work the seller put into it. He needs to make a certain amount of money to be able to retire or to go into another business. He has all kinds of other things that are skewing his look at it, and he to get the best price possible. The buyer's valuation expert is like, one sec, there's an uphill battle over here. We're going to buy a new business. We're going to have to be able to train the staff. We're going to have transition customers. Maybe not everyone's going to stay with us. A risk. We have to price in the risk by saying it's true that you have this much customers, but maybe they're not going to stay with the business. So, we got to put the price down. So this is how we have to understand how we value ourselves. We can be skewed to overvalue ourselves or undervalue ourselves. And if we overvalue ourselves, we're going to get into challenges, difficulties, because we are not assessing our skills and our abilities correctly. And if we undervalue ourselves, we're not going to assess our abilities and what we could do correctly. But what God Almighty is saying over here to Moses is, you could leave all those calculations aside, because it's not about you. It's about God Almighty. He's creating you. He's bringing you into existence. And now he's saying, go do this. So who am I? I'm a nobody. Moses was a simple shepherd. He was going to be sent to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, lives in a big fancy palace with massive servants and armies and gold and so forth. So the evaluation is, the perspective is off. You think you're simple and a nobody. And while in one sense it's true, we're all simple nobodies, right? Because who are we? God Almighty is creating us. We're nothings. But what we do have is the power that God Almighty is giving us. He is giving us insight. He's giving us understanding. He's giving us wisdom. And he's giving us the power to carry out his mission. So that is not about us, it's about God. And same for the big hotshot driving his fancy car and with his big fancy palace and all his guards. He's also the same person. He's also just created by God Almighty, and he can only do what God gives him the power to do. So he himself doesn't have any special power, doesn't have any special abilities. You can't give him extra credence. So this is what God Almighty is saying to to Moses. He's saying, I am going to be with you. I'm going to go with you to Paro. You don't think about who you are and don't think about what Paro is, because it's not about you or him. It's about me, God is saying. And I'm commanding you, I'm giving instruction you to do this. I'm going to go with you. I'm going to be the one who's going to make this work. So that's a lesson for all of us in our lives. That's the exile that we create is all our thinking about ourselves, enclosing ourselves, and then thinking about the other person and giving him credence, giving him power. Then at the other part of this, sure that the people, he's come up with his own assessment and evaluation of whether it's a worthwhile mission. Is it worthwhile to go take the Jewish people out of Egypt? Are they worthy of it? And again, that God is saying to them, that's not your calculation. It's not your calculation as to whether or not they're worthy. The answer is that they are worthy based on God's calculations. Because Moses is looking at it, what's their past behavior and what's their current behavior? It's not scoring so well. He's got some good evidence that suggests that they're not worthy. Quarrelsome, squealing on each other, but slandering each other. So God says, that could all be true. That's not my calculations. My calculations is I am looking at what the Jewish people are going to Sinai to serve me and receive the Torah on Mount Sinai. I'm looking at what they're capable of accomplishing. What are the Jewish people going to be able to do once I take them out of Egypt? So the same, we have to apply this to ourselves. God is giving us an instruction, hey, go do this good thing. And then we're like, oh, I don't know if that's really a good idea. I don't know if those people are going to listen anyways. You know, we could talk about, okay, what activities are we going to do with our neighbors? How are we going to teach our neighbors about God, right? So we say, I don't know if they're interested. All they want to do is barbecue. All they want to do is listen to music. All they want to do is watch TV. That's their lost cause. We could all think like that. But God's coming and saying, no, that's about you and your thinking. That's about me and my thinking. It's about, don't think about what you think about my mission. Think about what God thinks about your mission. God says, here's a human being. He's lost in his barbecues and his TV shows and his whatever else is going on in his life. Don't write him off, because God sees him as what he has the potential for. When you bring these two things together, then you have redemption. Because you have a person who is a simple person, has all kinds of limitations, right? Moses, greatest person in human history, perhaps. Greatest prophet for sure. Greatest leader of the Jewish people. And he had a speech impediment, and he was a shepherd, and who was he? And God's saying, it doesn't matter. You are the one that has to carry out this mission. And then the mission, what is like that? Scrap your calculations. You are responsible for following out my mission. I see from a different angle. God sees the potential of the people around us from God. And when we do that, so now is going to engage 100% in doing God's mission, because we're not holding ourselves back for some form of calculations. Maybe I shouldn't put all my energy into this. Maybe I'm not really the right person. All these insecure thoughts. We're not going to let any insecure thoughts into our brains, because we're going to know that God is with us. And number two is we're going to look at the rest of the world according to the mission statement from God, not according to our calculations. We're going to see, wow, that's a human being. Wow, you know what he's capable of? Just the way God looks at us. Wow, look at that. Look at that Yitzhak David Smith. Wow, he's Well, that's what he sees, right? I might not even see that in myself. And the same is with you and each person. Is each person has that. God sees what we're capable of. So he's saying, no, you are worthy of going out of exile. You're worthy of going out of your limitations, whatever your limitations are. You don't have to pay attention to the details of limitations because I'm there with you. I'm going to take you out of your limitations and I can help you take the next guy out of his limitations. So that, my friends, is what we can learn. The is putting incorrect emphasis, the incorrect calculations, and the redemption is the over our life, our thinking, our will, our mission in the hands of God Almighty. He knows what we're capable of. He's sending us on the missions that we are capable of, and he is sending us on the missions that he knows are worthwhile. And if we just follow his instructions, then we're out of Egypt. We're out of the exiles. And that is what's going to lead to the complete redemption, because ourselves as God sees us. And we're going to see our fellow human being as God sees him and her. And then we see what God sees. Any questions? Okay. Questions? Any questions? Stop here tonight. And everyone should have a happy Passover. Correct. Yes, there was the rabbi in the cave who burned up a field and a farm after leaving, and he had to return to the cave. He could develop the compassion for them correctly. So that's absolutely that. Once you see not merely what the person is doing right now, but the potential of that person. A person is when he's in a state of his own imprisonment, and when he's in a state of his own exile, it's only temporary. It's a temporary diversion, distraction from his real reality. So when you see a person who looks like a raving lunatic, really that person caught up in some insecure thoughts and mental stress. That's not who he really is. Really, he's innately healthy. And in one thought, he can go from being a lunatic to being completely healthy. That's what every one of us has that ability. So same thing as with his spiritual behavior. Any spiritual, his physical conduct, whatever he's doing, I want to be different. So what God sees is that potential. That's why he gives every person life. That's the attribute of mercy. Mercy is to say, okay, the conduct is not correct, but I'm going to keep giving the person another chance. That's merciful. And that's what we have. That's the gift that we have. So the antidote to what everything that's going on in the world is, like you're pointing over here in the comments, is seeing the potential of our fellow man. The people, you see, there's a very, very fine line between the people who have plans and people who are well-meaning but fall for the same thinking. So you have a Amalek looks at every human being, sees they're created in the divine image, and Amalek hates God and wants to fight against it in the divine image. You have a person who's very, very spiritual, and he believes in God, and he loves God. And he looks at people and he says, these people are so wicked that it's okay if they all get killed because they're just lowlifes. Okay, so the end result is exactly the same as Amalek's end result. They're both rooting for the death and destruction of a person or many people. So that's where we have to be careful. We have to realize that when we think we're loving God because we're proclaiming God's name and we're saying we love God and we say that we love God's people and all these kind of things, and we want to do all these kind of things. But if we're thinking negatively about God's creation, which the height of his creation is God's people, then in what way practically is the end result look different than Amalek's end result? That's why we cannot say any human being is beyond redemption. Even the people that are working with Amalek, even the people in Amalek themselves, because it says that Amalek will, at the same time, Amalek, some of Amalek's people had some of his sons or grandsons that they actually did tshuva and they converted to Judaism. So that is the potential of every single human being. Incredible potential. That's what we have to see. And we have to make sure, we have to look at what's the end result that we're endorsing. That's what we need to evaluate in ourselves. And that's what we need to make sure that we are really aligned with God's vision. And that was the lesson from Moses over here in the chapter 3, verse 12 of Exodus, a book of Shemais, is that his perspective was being corrected by God Almighty to say, don't write anybody off. Even if your analysis is correct based on the current moment, that these people are lacking merits, but look at their potential. And that's what God sees. God sees the potential that all these people are going to come to serve him. And that's his ultimate intention. That's his ultimate plan. And that's what he's been putting all this energy into, bringing this great creation into existence, and all humanity into existence is for that very purpose. And may we speedily merit the complete revelation of that with the coming of Mashiach, when we're going to see every single human being serving God Almighty. Thank you for the questions. Everyone should have a beautiful holiday. Happy Passover, and God bless you all.